Okay, so hi everyone. I hope you were able to open up the link and get onto our very exciting Google Hangout Live webinar. Thanks for joining us. I'm happy that we're able to bring you Let's Continue the Conversation, some additional information from Michelle Martin. I know at our May 29th meeting, a lot of the comments on the evaluations indicated that people didn't feel there was enough time. And this is a way to use some of the tools that we learned about in order to continue learning about social media. One thing I just want to let everybody know is that this is co-sponsored between the Mental Health Association in New Jersey's Career Connection Employment Resource Institute and the New Jersey Rehabilitation Association. I hope a few of you are out there. A few housekeeping details before we get started. If you have any questions, please email them to the provided address. I will be forwarding them to Michelle throughout the interview or just asking her as we go along. If you have any technical difficulties, you can email me at rkaluski@mhanj.org. Otherwise, questions for Michelle, go to CCERItraining@gmail.com, and you have that email address in the link that I sent you. Following the webinar, we're going to send you out a brief survey, and once you complete the survey, we'll send you a certificate of attendance. So we welcome you all, and I'd like to hand it over to Michelle to get started. Thanks.
Okay, great. Thanks, Ruth, and hi, everyone. As Ruth said, this is a follow-up to respond to some of the questions that had come up when we did the training in May. And actually what we wanted to start with was a couple of areas that we had not been able to talk about because we just had so many things going on at the presentation that we did in May. So I'm going to start with sharing my screen with all of you, and I want to talk about hold on, let me do that. We're going to talk a little bit about the some of the tools that we had started with in the presentation that were Google, and really get into some of the Google tools in your job search. So there are three tools that I want to talk about in this presentation. One is Gmail, which is kind of the start of everything. The second is Google Drive, which is a way that you can create and store and share a variety of documents online, and there are a lot of advantages to that, particularly in working with job seekers. And then I'm also going to talk with you a little bit about Google Calendar and using Google Calendar. So first of all, let's talk about Gmail. And why Gmail? The first thing is Gmail is actually the preferred account by employers. They've actually done studies on this or surveys on this where they found that if you're using AOL or Yahoo or some of those other kinds of web-based email providers, employers think that you lack technology skills. And so Gmail is considered to be sort of the tool or the Gmail or email address that suggests to employers this is a person who's up to speed on technology. The other major reason to use Gmail is it's really the gateway to all the other Google products. So many of the things that we're talking about, using Google Calendar, using Google Drive, using Google Hangouts, which I'll talk more about in a little bit too, which is what we're using right now to do this webinar. All of those things require you to have a Gmail address if you're going to create products or create a calendar, use a calendar, create a document in Google Drive, and so forth. Another reason to use Gmail is it has great opportunities to use labels for organizing, and so you can actually in job search you could organize, put labels to Gmail that are color coded, so it helps make it easier for people to organize. You can use filters to automatically route your emails. So you can actually tell Gmail that when an email comes in that meets certain criteria, you want to do something with it. I'll show you how that works in a second. There's also great search as part of Gmail, and it's integrated with some other tools like video, chat, calendar, and tasks. So it makes it easy, for example, to add a task using Gmail. So let me talk a little bit about filters in Gmail. And the idea of a filter it's sort of like a technology-enabled mini assistant for you. You in Gmail are able to create a filter. so that when an email comes into your inbox, you can tell Gmail to do certain things with it based on the criteria for that email. So you can actually have it select certain emails that you want to archive immediately. You can have it when an email comes in from a particular address or a particular person, it could be starred so that it stands out for you. You can apply a label to it so that it automatically gets put into, gets organized for you. You can have it forward to another email address, or you could automatically delete it. But the filter idea makes it, so for example, if you wanted to have labels that were related to your job search, it could be, you know, something where it's for follow-up, for example, you could create a filter that when an email came in that had a certain thing in the subject line, resume, let's say, or if it had something in the body of the email, you could actually have it automatically apply the label follow-up. So there are lots of ways that you can play around with it, but it helps you stay more organized when you start playing around with filters. They're also within Gmail, you have Gmail tasks, and so you're able to create task lists in your Gmail. You can add tasks, you can delete tasks, you can organize and reorder tasks and activities. And so that is integrated in with your Gmail so that you can see it easily. I want to talk now about Google Drive and explain a little bit about Google Drive as a tool for job search. It allows you, Google Drive is an online, almost file cabinet, and I'm going to actually show you what it looks like in a second. You're able to upload and create Word documents, PowerPoints, Excel documents. You can even create forms. Everything is stored online so that it would be accessible from your Gmail account anytime, anywhere. That way you don't have to worry about, oh, I saved that on my hard drive at work and now I can't access it, or I forgot to send it to myself. You can have documents that are completely private so that only you have access to them, or you can share them with others. So if you want to do group editing, for example, and I'm going to show you what that could look like in a second, you can share it with other individuals, and then they have access to that document and can go in and edit it online. It's great for group writing. That way you know that always the most up-to-date document is available online. Then you can also obviously do online editing and commenting and so forth. I want to show you how my Google Drive, what my Google Drive looks like, so that you can get an idea of what goes on in Drive. So what you should see here is my Drive. These are all the different documents that I've created using Google Drive. You can organize them into folders. I typically don't do that unless I know from the beginning that it's a project, because there's also a great search feature, so I can find any document that I want to find. In Drive, I'm able to create a document, so I can create a folder. I could create a document, which would be like a Word document. I can create a presentation, which would be like a PowerPoint. I can create a spreadsheet, which would be like Excel. I can create a form. I'll show you what forms look like in a second when we create them. The other thing that you're able to do is if you have a document that is already created, say a Word document, for example, you can do upload, and if you select upload files, then it will allow you to select a document from your hard drive that you could then upload to Google Drive. And when you do that, that then is going to be a document that you would be able to share with other people, edit with other people, and so forth. So let's look at an example. My daughter a few months ago was applying for jobs. She had just graduated from college, and so we had her resume. We uploaded it to Google Drive. And you'll see in a second, it's going to load her resume up. And you'll see that it's very much like a regular Word document. You have a lot of the same, you have the same formatting options and so forth. So it's very similar to Word, but I want to show you a couple of features or options with this. One thing is, so if Allie and I had this document shared between us, Then I can make edits, so I can make edits right there. But then when she would go into the document, she would see my edits right here. They would both be, she would see it online, and she could say, I don't like that, and she could just delete those edits. We can also do comments. So if up here in the right-hand corner, I can click on comments, and then I add a comment. So I can say, this looks great. And when she would go online, she would actually see my comments on there, and she could either, if it was a question, she could fix it and then click on resolve if she wanted, or she could add an additional comment about it. But it's a way for us to be able to have that conversation kind of back and forth, again, online. These are things that you see in Word, but this makes it more accessible, again, anytime, anywhere. The other thing that I can do is share documents. So if I wanted to, I could add her, in this case, this particular version of her resume we didn't share between us, but I could add her, or if she had uploaded it or put it online, she could then share it with me, and then both of us would be able to see it. To do that, I would just put in her email address. I could also add a message if I wanted to, just saying, hey, I uploaded your resume, go take a look. And you can, when you send that notification, you can send a copy to yourself, and you can even paste the item of the document directly into the email that goes to the other person. So it's a really nice way to be able to do collaborative writing. From a job search perspective, I would see job seekers uploading a resume, cover letter, that kind of thing, and then they could share those individual documents with you as a case manager, and you would be able to go in and make comments, edits, etc. online. The other thing is it would always be available to you if they had shared it with you. So you wouldn't have to worry about, oh, I forgot to save that, and so now I can't find it. It would always be online. If they made edits to it, then again, the latest version would be available. So you would know that you were seeing that latest version when you went into your Google Drive. So it's a really nice way to do group editing and group writing. Another thing about Google Drive is that you can create forms. And for forms, you would go into create a form, and it lets you, first it'll ask you what kind of theme do you want. There are different kinds of themes you can use. Usually I use the default theme. And I can say I want this to be my job search log. So I can actually set up a form, and you'll see that there are all different ways that, so this is the title of it. I can have a description of it. I could then say, name of employer or business name. And then I have the option to select different types of questions. So I could do text, paragraph text. I could do scale, grid, whatever I want. In this case, I might say text. And then I click on done, and you'll see it creates that item. I can continue to add items, so then I might say I'm going to do another text thing that is contact name for the people I'm talking to, the jobs I'm applying for, and maybe then I want to say, job title I applied for, and I'm not going to do the whole thing, but you get the idea. And then when I say, let's say done, and then you'll see that I can look at the live form. So this actually would create a little form for me that I could fill out. So I'm going to say it's ABC Business. And then it is Jane, might be my contact name, and the job title I applied for is, administrative assistant. And I click on submit, and it actually, what Google Drive does is it creates a response. It automatically creates a Google spreadsheet when I create a form, so you can actually see the responses. So you can see right in here, it created a spreadsheet and it has that information in it. So once I've created that little form for myself, if I use it as a job search log, for example, then I can just, as I get job search information, I could automatically fill out this little form, and it's going to put it into a spreadsheet. It's also obviously great for keeping track of, for doing surveys. So if you wanted to do some kind of customer survey as a staff person, forms are a great way to do that. So Google Docs for me is really one of the best options out there for being able to share information and get that, be able to do some group writing and editing and so forth. Another tool that I want to show you guys is Google Calendar, which is another Google tool, obviously. And with Google Calendar, from a job search perspective, this would be a great way for you to be able to be sharing a calendar with a job seeker. Google Calendar lets you have multiple calendars. You can create as many calendars as you want to. People can also share their calendars with you. Right now, this is my Google Calendar. That's what I use all the time. What you could do is have a job seeker create their calendar, and then they would share it with you. There are sharing settings in here. So if I wanted to share my, turn my calendar back on. If I wanted to share my calendar, then I would simply go to my calendar, go to share this calendar, and then I can add email addresses of people that I want to share with. You can see that, for example, I'm sharing this calendar with my husband, so he's able to go on and see what's going on my calendar, whatever I've scheduled. Same kind of thing for you with job seekers. They can create their calendars, share their calendar with you, and then you can see all of the things that they have scheduled, interviews, appointments, and so forth. You could also potentially add appointments to that shared calendar so that you were able, if you had set something up or whatever, you would be able to share that with them. To create events on here, it's really easy. You just put in, the time and the date that you want to add something. So I'll, if I wanted to say 9 a.m. appointment, actually, I'm going to put in a real one I know that I have. So tomorrow at 8:30 a.m., I have a hangout with Blanche. So I can just type that in. If I put in the time, it's automatically going to create it as the time. I do create event. And you'll see that automatically gets added to my calendar. I can edit the event, and there are lots of things that you can do for individual items. So I could obviously change the date and the time and so forth. I could put in the location, so that I can put in the address, and then it will map it. I can add other people who may be attending that meeting or attending that appointment, and just put their emails in there, and it will let them know. I can add reminders. So I have it set up so that I get email reminders 15 minutes before something, 30 minutes before something, and 15 minutes before any appointment. But you can also set it up that you have as many as you want. You can have it come to your email, or you can have it pop up, and you can have as many as you want. You can also add attachments. So let's say, for example, you were going to, this was to set up an interview. You would actually, if you click on Add Attachment, you can either put something in from your Google Drive so that you had all of the documents that went with that interview, for example, attached to your appointment, so you knew you had everything in one place. Or if it was stuff that you had on your hard drive, you would be able to upload and share that or get that information from your hard drive. So you can see that calendars can really be a powerful way to organize and coordinate through the calendar, rather than having to constantly be wondering, going back and forth with phone calls or that kind of thing. So those are kind of the three big ones that I wanted to talk about. Let me see if there are any questions about Drive, Gmail, or Calendar. Mostly I wanted to kind of show you guys the possibilities, and then see about you getting in and kind of taking a look at them.
Hi, thanks, Michelle. I'm looking at a couple of people are having some trouble with the email, so I wanted to repeat it again. The email to ask questions is CCERI trainingschedule@gmail.com. So you can go ahead and email there if you have questions for Michelle. One of the questions, Michelle, was that people are wondering if you can integrate this into meeting with people and kind of updating resumes as you go along, so you don't always have to have the consumer come in.
Yep.
How does that work?
So I think you would have a couple of options. So one would be doing what I would call asynchronous, which would be you could have somebody upload their resume to Google Drive. You can then go in and they would share it with you so that you can make edits. You can then go in and make edits or add comments like I was showing previously. Then when they go on to their resume again, they can see those comments and edits that you've made. So that would be one way to do it. The other way to do it, and if you can do this, the one challenge is depending on your organization's policy around video conferencing, but that's actually something you could do through a Hangout. So right now we're doing a Hangout. You can actually share Drive within a Hangout. So we could be video conferencing like this and making edits at the same time. You could also, frankly, do that with the phone. So you could both be in the same document at the same time and talk on the phone. And what you will actually see is both of the people logged in, and then you can literally see the other person typing. So I could be talking to you saying, you know what, I think you should, change the font on that, or you should add in this phrase or whatever. They could start typing, and you can literally see them typing. You can see the changes happening live while you're talking.
Okay, and the follow-up question to that was, once you have this document complete, you've both been kind of working on it and writing it and editing it.
Right.
Does it end up as a Word document that you can then
download it? You can download it as a Word document or a PDF file. Yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot to talk about how you can get to it. So you could print it, but then you can also download as a Word or a PDF. Usually, I suggest if you got the formatting the way you want it in Drive, that you download it as a PDF so it preserves the formatting. It doesn't get, otherwise if you download it as a Word doc, you may have to go in and tweak some things.
Okay, so that means that once you're finished, if you're working with the consumer on the phone, you can finish it, download it, and send it to an employer.
Yes.
Ready. Okay, great. A second question just came in that asked if you could highlight or color code the edits when you're working on the shared documents, because there might be more than one person who's going to be.
So that's a little old school in terms of if you're making actual edits as opposed to leaving comments. You can there's a way to do like highlight, so you could highlight whatever it was that you were making edits to. It's not the same as track changes in Word, in other words. But you could change the font color. That's what I often do, is I'll put in edits but in a different color font.
Okay, Michelle, thanks. I'm looking to see if there's any other questions on this. So give me a second. I don't see anything right now. So why don't you go ahead, and if something comes, maybe check back with me in a couple minutes, and we'll see if there's any other questions.
Okay. So that was kind of looking at Google tools and dealing with that. Now we're going to move on, and I want to talk about, and so I'm going to go back to screen sharing. I'm going to talk about cleaning up digital dirt, because that was another big question that came up. It was, how do we clean up the digital dirt? So one of the things, obviously, with social media and being active on social media is that employers are able to uncover some information about people that maybe they didn't want out there about themselves. When we're thinking about digital dirt or online information that maybe we're not happy about, the first thing to think about, the first question to ask yourself is, what happens if someone Googles my name? And in fact, I would do that. Go ahead and Google your name and see what you're going to find out. to make, one of the things that employers might do is Google you along with some of your other information, like contact information. Like if you sent in a resume and you had an email or a phone number on there, whatever, often they'll use that to make sure that they're getting to the right person. So find out what happens when you Google yourself, because that's going to tell you the kinds of information that employers may uncover. The second question then, when you see this information, is this information that you put up, or is this information that someone else has put out there? Because there are different strategies depending on whether it's your information or information that someone else has put out there, over which you have less control. And the third question to be asking yourself is it accurate or is it inaccurate? And a lot of times it may be accurate information, but it's unflattering information. If it's accurate, you can't do anything, in terms of kind of saying, hey, this isn't true. But if it's not accurate, or if it's not true, then there's a way that you can approach people about that. In general, if it's information that you don't want up there, you can delete it. Or you can ask the other person who posted it to delete it if that's not something that's in your control. If you're not able to delete it or get rid of it, and I'm going to talk about some specific ways to do that based on different social media platforms, with employers, the next option you have is to explain to them ahead of time, hey, you may Google me, you may find this information, let me just explain this. What we know is that employers are using social media, especially in the stages of when they're screening and deciding who they might interview, or if they want to bring people in for a second interview, they're definitely looking at that stuff. It's better for you to, if you know there's something out there that you don't want out there, that you explain it ahead of time. And then, of course, you should always think twice before you post anything. But let's talk specifically about some different social media channels. Probably the number one offender in this area is Facebook. And you have some different options, and we're going to talk about all of them. And it's about deleting, untagging things, unliking certain things, unfriending certain people, and also finding ways to set for privacy on Facebook. So that when I'm talking to people about trying to figure out what employers can see about you, there's actually a way that you can do this. If you go into settings, and then you'll see that you can, once you select settings, one of your options is you can look at timeline and tagging settings. And you can go to where it says who can see things on my timeline. You can select the option to review what other people see on your timeline, and you just click on that little link that says view as, and it actually will let you look at your timeline as though you were the public, someone from the general public. So this is my actual timeline based on what the public would see if they were to come and look at my Facebook page. That is really helpful because that is what employers will see. So you can pretty quickly see what's the stuff that's up there. Am I comfortable with this? Am I not comfortable with this? And do I want to make any changes? I personally am cool with having my artwork on my Facebook page. If I were in job search mode, maybe I wouldn't want that there, and I would want to change what I have up there. You also have the option to view as a specific person. So if you clicked on that, you would be able to see who is, what would this individual person be able to see if they went on there. That's only if there's somebody who's one of your friends. But that's how you can find out what your mom can see when you post on Facebook. So that's the first place you want to go when people are trying to figure out, well, what can people see about me on Facebook? You want to go to that timeline setting and do that option to view as, and then it will take you to your page and you'll be able to see everything that the public can see. Then thinking about what do you want to do. So let's say I looked at my Facebook feed or my Facebook page and saw that I had certain things that were public that I didn't want to be public and that I didn't want on there anymore. And so what I would do is I can just delete individual posts. So if I found that there was a post that I didn't want up there, then I could delete that individual post. Another thing to do is to look at my photos. So let's say I got tagged in a photo that I didn't like. This happens to be one that I do like. But if somebody tagged me and that photo therefore was showing up in my timeline, then I can just remove the tag and it will remove the photo from my timeline. It will still be in my friend's timeline, but it won't be in my timeline. Another thing that I tell people is to, on your fan page or on your profile page, look for the pages that you've liked. So because that's the kind of thing employers might look at. And if you see something on there that maybe isn't going to reflect well on you in the job search, you should unlike those fan pages. And also look at the groups that you belong to. Again, if these are groups that are not appropriate for you, then you are going to want to, or not appropriate for your job search, then you're going to want to leave those groups. And that way they're not going to show up in your profile. There are other things that you can do in terms of privacy settings. So you really do have an option to, as you post on Facebook, you can choose who can see posts. Most people who are on Facebook know this, and so they're trying to be selective about, am I sharing with the public, am I sharing with friends, am I sharing it with acquaintances, and so forth. But not everyone does. You can set a default setting in your privacy setting and tools so that when you share things, it just is shared with friends, or it's just shared with friends, which would be your tightest privacy if you want to share on there. But you can also make decisions when you're posting for individual posts. Every time you have the option to say, who do you want to share it with? I want to share it with the public, I want to share it with friends, I want to share it with acquaintances. So that's Facebook. Twitter is another popular tool for especially younger people, not always for people our age. But Twitter's another one, and people may find that they have some tweets on there, some individual tweets that they want to get rid of, and all they have to do is go to that individual tweet, and you can't see it very well here, but there's like a little trash can, and you just click on that, and it's going to delete that tweet. You do have to know that if someone took a screen capture of that tweet, then they would still obviously be able to show that, but most of the time that's not going to be an issue. You can also protect your tweets, and so if somebody's pretty active on Twitter and they have concerns about what employers might see about them on Twitter, I generally suggest that you focus on protecting your tweets. So you're going to need to, if you go into your settings, then you're able to, through settings, you can select security and privacy, and then you can select protect my tweets, and that will protect your tweets. So I'm getting an email that's saying we can't see the activity anymore, so let's see what's going on with that. Are you still there, Ruth?
Yeah, I'm noticing we're just seeing the PowerPoint, but we're not seeing anything. If you're putting up Facebook or anything like that, it's not coming up.
I was just showing the PowerPoint.
Oh, okay, so you didn't show anything about a Twitter feed or?
I didn't show it live. I was showing it.
Okay.
You didn't see the slide? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, we saw the slide, just the digital dirt slide, but it sounded like you were showing some stuff on Facebook, so I just wanted to make sure.
Oh, and you guys weren't able to see those on Facebook. That's
nothing. All we saw was a slide for digital dirt.
Oh, okay. So yes, I was showing other slides at that point. What we can do is we can share the presentation with people so they can see. It was screen capture, so you can see what I was talking about. So we can email that out to people. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, continuing from here on, though, that we'll be able to capture what you were trying to show, or?
Yeah, I mean, that's my plan.
Okay, great.
So.
One of the other questions about Facebook was that, and I think you've mentioned it before, privacy settings from Facebook itself change. How does that affect what you've done? When they change their settings, how does it affect what comes up on your feed?
Well, usually that's why people need to kind of be on top of changes. Now, Facebook has been given a lot of crap over the years for the fact that with Facebook, they typically go with the most open possible thing possible. So they will, you have to kind of be aware of it, but over time, because they've gotten a lot of grief over this, they now, when you go on Facebook, it will say we've made changes to privacy, or there's a new way for you to post your information or whatever. I generally think it's a good idea to maybe do some periodic checks by using that view as option that I mentioned, where you're able to look at someone's page or look at your own page as the public would see it. You can also just log out of your Facebook and then go to your Facebook profile and you can see what's there.
Okay. And also people are always being told, this was one of the comments from the evaluations from May 29th, that consumers think that their stuff is private. They think it's private. And can you sit with them and go through to show them that what anyone else can see, like by going in a different way than going onto their own?
Yeah, I mean, if you are aware that someone thinks what they're posting is private, but it's not, like you can see something that they thought was private, then yeah, I think you sit down. I mean, there's no reason that you couldn't, as part of preparing someone for the job search, say, let's look at your Facebook profile. Let's see what an employer might see if they came to look at your Facebook profile. And look at that and then talk about what's problematic or what seems good or, whatever. Does that answer the question? Or am I missing?
No, I think so. Another question's coming in, but maybe you can get back to me in a couple minutes. It seems to be caught in transit.
I have a comment here. Even if you're careful about your settings, do you have to think like whatever I post, it could be seen by anyone somehow, someday? Yes. To some extent, I think you have to do that. Now, on the other side of that, I will say that I think that as a society, we're really going to have to start grappling with, and are starting to grapple with, sort of what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. So in social media, that lets me potentially show more of myself, in the world, and employers are really going to have to think about what does that mean, how does that, kind of tie in with work. There are lots of employers that get like you're a human being, and so you might have a beer after work and post something about, hanging out with your friends or whatever. Some employers don't get that, or only want you to have sort of this professional persona. I think it's a real issue, kind of identity-wise that we're all dealing with, where it's like, well, how much can you share? How are people going to respond to you? What does all of that, mean for me individually in my job search? And that, I think, is kind of an ongoing conversation.
Okay, thanks.
So, and somebody said, I did not see the slide of Facebook. Yep, got that, and we'll send the slides out. Not sure why it didn't do the sharing, but we'll send those slides back out. Okay. So those, mostly I wanted to share in terms of the cleaning up the digital dirt, some ideas on what you can do with Facebook, on what you can do with Twitter, because those are typically the ones where you're most likely to have issues. You may, people are starting to use Instagram more, but I don't know that too many employers are looking at Instagram to see what's on there. But that's another thing to think about, is that as certain platforms become more popular, you have to kind of start to pay attention to our employers starting to look at those. I did not talk about your digital dirt with LinkedIn, because typically that is not a problem. People get that that's a professional network as opposed to a social network, and so they are typically not putting information up there that is going to be problematic, because they understand that most of the time when they're using it, people are just basically using it as like kind of an online resume. But Facebook and Twitter are the ones where you tend to have kind of the most issues. The last question that had come up that we wanted to talk about was the issue of how thinking about customers, and does social media and all this technology stuff, does this really apply to them? And I think that there are a few things that we have to think about when it comes to using technology. And we talked about this at our session in May. The first piece of using technology and social media is, of course, we have to get comfortable with using it. We can have real challenges at times if we're not savvy with it, or we're a little worried about how to use the technology. If we're not comfortable with it, then it makes it hard for us to work with job seekers. But I think it's our responsibility to become comfortable with these tools and start using a lot of these tools, because these are the ways that businesses and employers are operating in the world. They are using these kinds of tools to get work done. And we need to know how to use them so that we can interact with employers and use them with employers. We need to be showing our customers how to use these tools. Because the next piece of it is, this is really, the digital divide is I think, going to be a big part of the conversation around kind of the haves and the have-nots in the economy. People who do not have technology skills, who are not comfortable using these kinds of technologies, are increasingly being left behind in our economy. And it is really, if we want people to be job ready and to be able to be competitive in the workforce and have them be desirable candidates to employers, they have to know how to use these tools. Things like LinkedIn, for example, that's something that employers are going to LinkedIn to try to recruit people. And if our folks don't know how to use that, then they're going to be at a disadvantage. Having them learn how to use things like Google Drive and Google Calendar and all of that, again, those are a lot of tools that businesses are using, or they're using something that's similar to that. And if our people don't have the skills to use those tools, then they're not going to be competitive, and we're going to have a much harder time helping them find employment. So I definitely think that we have to look at, how do we help our job seekers use these tools, become more proficient with them? They can start to practice using them with us, and then that lets them be able to, on down the road in a work environment, they're also going to be able to use them. We do obviously have some issues with access at times. So one, depending on the nature of a person's disability, that can influence the accessibility of certain tools or certain resources, and so we may have to look at some accessibility issues. I also think of access just in terms of having a computer at your house, and having internet access. Not everyone has that, of course, but then there are lots of places where you can go to use computers with internet access, like going to the library or to the one-stop career centers, to nonprofits, to your organization. Having people have opportunities and showing them how to connect to that, I think there are lots of places in the community where they can do that. Another thing to keep in mind is that even if people don't have a laptop, increasingly a lot of people have either a tablet, an iPad, because that's much less expensive, and tons of people have smartphones, and people that would shock you still have iPhones. And so a lot of this stuff is accessible through apps on phones. And so we can't just assume that because someone doesn't have a laptop, they're not able to get online, or they're not able to use some of these things. You can use these tools through other mobile devices, through devices like smartphones and tablets and everything else. So we have to get creative and kind of think about what are the different options or the opportunities that are out there for people. So are there any other questions? Because those were, again, really kind of the main questions that we wanted to address based on what had come to us in the follow-up from the session. And Ruth, I'm also going to ask you, do you have any other questions? Did I miss anything?
Just a second. I'm just waiting to see what else comes in.
Okay. Did I miss anything that we had talked about?
No, I think you covered everything that people asked in the survey. People generally wanted more time, so I'm hoping that there'll be a few more questions that come in. But generally, I think sometimes it's been the fear of our own fear of not knowing the stuff well enough to teach to our clients that holds us back.
Well, some of it's about playing around. I mean, people look at me. I'm 50 years old, right? I taught myself how to do all this stuff. Nobody came in and said, "Here, let me do a training for you on Google Drive," or "This is why you should use Google." I just was paying attention to things and seeing, stuff that was going on out there, and it's like, wow, this would be great to use with customers. These are great tools that we could be using in the work that we do. And so I just start playing around with stuff. And anything that you want to know how to do, anything, Google it. Like that's the number one thing. Somebody else wanted to know how to do it too, and so they either did a YouTube video showing you how to do it, or they have some kind of step-by-step thing. Google itself, if we're talking about Google specifically, has, help and step-by-step and all of that stuff. It's just a matter of getting in there, playing around with it, seeing what you can do. If you run into a problem, you go Google it and see, how do I address this issue?
Well, one additional question is, if it were up to you and there was only a few things that you could teach somebody due to time restraints and equipment restraints, what do you think is the most important for our consumers who are looking for employment? What should they start with? Should they first create their LinkedIn profile? Should they clean up their Facebook? I mean, there's a couple of things. What would be your priority when we're working with our consumers?
Okay. So one, I think you have to look at the individual consumer and what their situation is. So and talk to them about these things. So if I think as a matter of course, you should be looking at people's social media profiles and seeing how those are going to represent a person in the job search. If there are problems with that, then that becomes a priority. And helping the person, deal with that. If in looking at social media profiles, you see they have none, and that, for example, they need to create a LinkedIn profile, then, that becomes a priority. I will say that with LinkedIn, creating a profile on LinkedIn, you need to think about what is your purpose for doing that. You have to have a profile to really get on there and do anything. You can't kind of search and make connections and everything else without having a profile. But, why are you using the profile? Why are you setting it up? Are you really planning to use it as a way to kind of connect, build your connections and look at your network? And that's how I think people should be using it. So setting up your profile so it's good enough, and then really focusing on reaching out and making connections, that becomes a priority. So I really think it depends on the person's job search goals and their job search situation, which area that you focus on. I think you need to be knowledgeable in all of these things. I'm not saying you have to be an expert, but I think you have to be knowledgeable in all of these things, and then work with the customer to figure out, what need to be the priorities based on what's going on with their particular job search. I will say that you could give yourselves more time if you got serious about doing things like using the Google tools that I mentioned. So if you use Drive and Calendar to better coordinate and share information between you and your consumers, and got people in the habit of doing that, and you were working on that, that could ultimately make your life easier. It might not be easier at the beginning, but as you go through and you get more and more people doing that, and you get more comfortable with, how the process would work, that could buy you some extra time. Because we spend a lot of time doing the same stuff over and over again, looking for things,
And that would be a way that the consumers could practice, just by...
Right.
Okay, I'm going to wait another minute to see if we have any more questions. And then what I'm going to do for participants is I'm going to email out your screenshots, a recording of the video. Michelle had done a webinar with us earlier that started from the beginning with LinkedIn that might be beneficial to some people who haven't seen it. So I'll send the link to the first social media video which we have, which is very comprehensive, and then the link to this one. And hopefully that'll be some tools that people can use and even show to consumers, at least the first one, when they're starting their job search.
Yeah. I have a question here that says, is it important to have a pic on LinkedIn? Yes. Employers will, if you just have an avatar up there, most people will just, their eyes glaze right over. you need to have a photo. If you are planning in any way, shape, or form to really use your LinkedIn, you need to have a photo up there, and it should be a professional looking photo. That is not the place to get too creative.
I always tell everybody that, Michelle. Michelle Martin says you must have a photo.
Not too creative. So.
Give me a second. Let me see if there's any other questions coming in. Anything? Okay, it looks like that's about it, Michelle.
All right. So, like you said, Ruth, we'll send you. You'll get a link to this recording as well as the link to previous recordings, and I'll also make sure that you get the PowerPoint that I put together, just so you can see the screenshots.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you, everybody, for coming, and we'll try this again after our next conference.
All right, great.
All right, thanks. Bye.